So this year has been kind of a tough year for me, and I thought it might be helpful to just kind of show you the way I approach weight loss when things are not going well. Now, last year I made a video about how to do an end of the year review, and I also gave out a printable, which you can find on my website, 6milestosupper.com/freebies, if you want the step-by-step process that I'm going to go through here. But in this video, I thought it would be a good idea just to take you along on the journey. I'm sitting here, today is the 30th. I've found this to be very helpful on the weight loss journey, particularly in maintenance. So this video's format is a little bit different than what I normally do, so I hope you enjoy it. So the first step is to reread last year's review. And so that just kind of sums up the year in a very quick format, just so I kind of know where did I start this year from. So one thing I did when I was doing my yearly review last year was to write down what my daily routine was like at the start of the year. And so basically it was the same from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. There wasn't much difference, but I do like that I did that. So, you know, you might want to consider doing that for yourself too. Now, specific to weight loss, there was a part where I just reviewed what my goals had been for 2023 and whether I hit them or not. And so one thing that stuck out to me was I had this goal, my physical goal, one of my physical goals was to have a yearly average of 145. And I wrote, did I hit this? No. My yearly average. So like, in other words, if you take 365 days worth of weights and then you add it all up and then divide by 365, my average was 149.52. And I wrote, that was a bad goal to have it be 145 because it's just not that important to me. And that has been something that, you know, in maintenance, trying to figure out that right goal to shoot for. I do find that I don't have a lot of motivation to keep it anything other than just the 140s, like that vague kind of like, I want to be in the 140s. Even that's not super duper motivating to me because I didn't notice a big difference from when I went from 158, which is when I originally started this channel. I started the channel about like 158 to 160. And then I lost down to 142, just because I was curious to see how far the plan would really take me. And, you know, what would it feel like to be at a lower weight? And I found there really wasn't much of a difference at all. Really no difference between 142 and 158, but I did like being in the 140s because I am technically overweight once I get above like 155 and above. So then that has been a bit tricky in maintenance, trying to figure out like what is my motivation to stay in the 140s as opposed to the high 150s. And while there's no physical difference, like I've not noticed any kind of benefit in either place. Just the technicality of being overweight, according to the body mass index, once I get above 155, does seem to be a bit of a motivator. So that was just something that I thought was worth sharing. Another thing I did was to record my beginning 7-day average, January of that year, and how I'm ending the year. And I like having that just in one place. So step 2 is to reread my journal entries from this past year, and then to take any insights that I have and put them in a new journal entry in my journal. And I kind of dread doing this, which is one reason why I'm doing this video, because this year has been a rough year and a lot of sad things happened in it. Specifically, my grandpa passed away and my dad passed away. And it was just rough. And so I kind of dread doing this, but I know that it's good for me to just kind of get a handle on what all went on this year. So the way I start off my end of the year review is to write down how many books I read for 2024, which technically I could theoretically finish a book in the next couple of days, but I don't think I will because I have a bunch of stuff, loose ends to tie up for this year. So I won't have a lot of time for reading, but I do like to have goals that are unrelated to weight loss. And that's the thing about like journaling and weight loss in general. There's so much, I think everything kind of relates back to the weight loss journey, as far as everything in your life can affect weight loss and maintenance once you get down to your goal weight. So I find it very helpful to keep track of all those things. So a journal is not just a place where I talk about my weight. It's also just where I talk about my life, because my stress levels can definitely affect my weight. And it's certainly what I've seen over the course of all these years is the times where I'm most stressed, that's when my weight is generally the highest. And the time when things are the most relaxed and things are good, that's when my weight is the lowest. It's just a lot easier to maintain in a lower weight range when things are going well. And it's more difficult. It takes more effort to keep things in check when my stress levels are high. So I wrote down my daily routine just to kind of give you an idea of how much detail I put in these things. I wake up at 5:00 a.m. I read 4 chapters of the Bible, 1 chapter of the Gospels, and I read an entry from the Rule of St. Benedict. Then I journal, but I have been sporadic lately. I pray, then I cold plunge. We do matins as a family. And then I talk about what my husband is currently doing in his work and the way things kind of run in the morning. And I also noted that I've been in a writing slump. I had a goal, which I was doing really well with, and this was back a few years ago. I was writing 1,000 words a day, and I was being really consistent with that. And then my granny and my father-in-law passed away within like a few days of each other. And that led me into a 9-month slump where I just didn't write. And I know that, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to just write, even when you're not feeling like writing. But I, got into a slump. And so then I had made a note of that in my journal entries. And so then I had gotten back into a good habit. And then in November of 2023, another slump started. And this makes sense to me because my dad, actually in May of 2023, May 13th, 2023, we found out he had some heart issues. And that was starting to kind of weigh on me. But as it turned out, he had surgery and that was fixed. It was actually going really well. But then in November, or a little bit before November, we found out he had esophageal cancer. And so basically from November on, for about another 9 months, I didn't write anymore. What happened during that time was he had cancer, he was going through chemo, and then he passed away in May of this year. And so then after that, it took me until about August to get back into a writing routine. And I did pretty well with that, except for in Thanksgiving of this year, which I knew this holiday season was going to be hard. And I just kind of mentally prepared for that like, this is going to be a rough one, and the way I approach weight loss and weight maintenance and everything in the holiday season is I approach it with the attitude, I'm okay with some weight gain. I would rather, because you do have options, right? You can just stick to your plan and be really strict, or be really consistent, depending on how you want to think about that. And your weight will stay more in check. Or you can give yourself more freedom and maybe gain a little, but, just have the attitude, you'll get it off in January. And my attitude has been from 2016, when I got down to my goal weight, is I would rather gain a bit than to and just really enjoy the holidays, like just kind of have a feasting kind of a time, and be okay with a little bit of weight gain. And usually the weight gain's somewhere between 1 to 3 pounds, generally speaking. And so that's been my approach. But this particular holiday season, I knew was going to be rough. And so I kind of expected a little bit of weight gain, which has happened. And I also knew that it was just gonna be hard, and it has. Like I fell off of my writing routine, and here we sit. It's the end of December, and I've been basically in a slump. I've done a little bit of writing. I'm like trying to get back on the horse, but it's just been, it's just part of it. And so it's good to sit down and have this data so that I can see, like, okay, yeah, here's what's going on. And I have been walking 6 miles a day, 6 days a week, which has been what I've done for years now. So I started this year at a 7-day average of 150.63. And then I ended the year as of today at 153. So that is higher than I want it to be. In fact, it's like right on where my red line is, which I really don't want to see numbers I really don't want to see numbers above 152 because that is starting to get too close because of the way water weight works. Like I don't like to be that high. I really want to keep my numbers in the 140s, but again, times like this, like for example, yesterday is a really good like snapshot of just the holiday season and how I approach it, and how it can lead to weight gain, and the fact that I'm okay with it. So yesterday was a day where we had church, and then after church, we did like a caroling party. So there's food there, obviously. And it's like all the delicious Christmas goodies you can imagine. And I want to take part in that. Like, I don't want to sit there and not eat, even though I knew that after that, we were going to have another party to go to. And meanwhile, I knew also that my weight was, like I think yesterday it was something around like 152.4. And so like, I already knew like it's higher than I want it to be. And yet I know also that I really want to enjoy the Christmas season. And I just want to be a part of it. So, and knowing at the same time, and this is how, it can get a bit tricky, knowing at the same time that I'm also grieving my father and my papa, and knowing that this is a hard season, and not wanting to overeat, but at the same time wanting to enjoy myself. So of course having that kind of food at that party, and then going to a family gathering a little while later, not really being hungry, but wanting to, enjoy in the like take part in it. And so, eating food. I don't like just sitting there not eating while other people are, it feels odd. And so I ate there. And then after that, I came home, and my husband and I we had some coquito, which is like a little holiday drink that someone had made for us, homemade. And my husband wanted to have that in the evening. And so I did have that too, even though I was full, like as far as like, it wasn't like I'm hungry, therefore I need to eat. It was more of this is a time of feasting, and I'm going to enjoy it. But I knew that whole time, I'm like, okay, my number is going to be higher in the morning. Like I could just tell, and it was like 154.2 this morning, which again, not a number I like seeing, but at the same time, I would prefer to do it this way. So that's just a glimpse into how I approach this stuff in maintenance, especially, this holiday season plus grieving, it's not an easy thing. It is a more complex thing. This past year has been probably the hardest year in maintenance, just because there has been so many emotional things happening. And it is what it is. I just have been muddling through the best I know how. And so I'm offering that as an encouragement that, things are not always perfect. And I'm certainly not always perfect. My results are not always perfect. And I hope that by sharing that with you, it will keep you encouraged on the weight loss journey. So before I went through and reread my journal entries, I did realize I needed to go through and see if I hit my 2024 goals. And it was not good. It was like so many of the goals. Basically, actually, when I look over it, it's like there are two things I did where I actually hit my goal. One of my goals, and this is a pretty vague goal, but it was to stay active. And I did do that. I had a bit of time when my dad was really bad that I was just upset, and I felt stressed out. And my walk, my daily walk, I felt like I just need to do something different. I had been wanting to try swimming. We moved into our house. Our house is a real fixer-upper, but it does have a pool. And I finally got it to the point where it was not black. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to try swimming instead of walking, because I knew like I didn't have the time available in my schedule to do both. And because the walking takes about 2 hours. And so I knew if I added another thing into it, I wouldn't be consistent. So I decided to switch to swimming like 50 laps in the pool. And it was rough as far as like, there were times where I was actually crying as I was swimming, and it was just a hard time. But throughout it all, I did stay active. Most of the time though this year it was just walking 6 miles a day. After a while, I stopped doing my laps and I just went back to walking because I prefer it. The other thing I did was I did read 52 books. So my goal is 52 books a year, but I read 53 this year plus the Bible. I did keep my prayer rule fairly well. I would say like I give myself a pass. There are some things where I'm not going to be perfect on it, but I feel like overall did I hit that goal? Yes. But there were so many others that like did I maintain in the 140s? So the way I look at that is I do a 365 day average. And no, like this year, my 365 day average was actually 151.34. So it's been, you know, higher than I wanted to be like all year long. I had a goal to do at least one non-movie date night per month, and I did none of those. I had a goal to create a creatives group in real life, have a group of creative people that I meet with regularly. Nope, didn't do that. But it was a rough year. I mean, what can I say? It was just rough. So now I get to read all about it and relive it. So I just finished reading January, and man, it's hard to reread your journal sometimes because there are going to be things you have to, you know, read that are not pleasant, and but you can get some insight. Like one thing that as I was reading, I thought was very interesting. So first of all, I like to be able to see timelines of things because sometimes you forget, like, well, what was actually going on, and so. January 13 is when my papa was hospitalized with pneumonia. Before that, he had been relatively healthy. And then by January 24th, he had passed away. And there was also a trip to Georgia for the funeral, which another thing I realized when I was rereading the journal was I didn't actually even talk about the funeral at all, which is, I don't know, interesting. And then also just talking about my dad's health in it. And there was just a lot of stress that month. Also, we were buying a house. We were in the middle of buying a house when my papa passed away. So there was that stress too. So writing these things down really is helpful because if you do notice, you know, that your weight is trending up, being able to see what was going on during that time, it can just help you to realize like, okay, when I'm going through a harder time, you know, I need to be more aware of, you know, how much you're eating or how fast I'm eating. Those are the two things I'm always looking at. Am I feeling overly full, or am I eating fast, or am I just eating a larger quantity than I normally would? So I'm through February now, and it's reminding me again, another good reason to keep a journal is so that you can have more self-compassion. Because, you know, as I was reading through February, so I had just dealt with the death of my papa. And then when we closed on this house, that was a good thing that was happening kind of at the same time this really sad thing was happening. But then when we moved into this house, we had some severe issues that popped up that we did not know were going to happen. We had some severe plumbing problems that were taking up a lot of my day trying to fix those things because we had already spent a lot of money on the down payment and we were trying to save money by doing things just on our own. And so it was taking up a lot of my time. And when the time was being taken up for me, I couldn't, you know, create content for this channel. And when I don't create content for this channel, my book sales drop and things like that. So my ad revenue drops. And so our income drops. But at the same time, these repairs needed to be done. And also, my husband's work hours at his job were lower than normal. Plus, we had traveled for my papa's funeral, so that had kind of hit our income. And so things were just stressful. And so just knowing that, like, oh, also, we had this electrical problem. We thought it was going to be like basically free to fix it because we thought we knew how to fix the problem. But as it turned out, it was going to be several $1,000s to fix. So I'm through March now. And in March, we had more issues with the house, just big repairs that need to be done. Things that took, again, my time away from this channel. And at the same time, things were going on with my husband's job, where like we had planned on him getting this certain kind of raise, but apparently there was miscommunication and it was significantly less than we thought it would be, which led to more money stress. So I actually had an entry just now where I said I was grateful for all these projects that were happening, all these terrible repairs that need to be done, because it distracted me from the fact that my dad's surgery was approaching, and that was like in mid-April. So, and I'm I'm really not looking forward to reading the next few entries because I know things are about to get really bad with my dad. So I just read the entry, and it was after my dad had surgery. I got to talk to him on the phone, and I didn't realize at the time that was the last conversation I had with him. But one thing I'm glad about, and it's something that has come out of this weight loss journey, I realized I had to face my own mortality when I was trying to figure out, like, why do I want to lose weight? Why is this important? One thing I realized was it doesn't matter how good your diet is, you know, or how much weight you lose. You're eventually going to die one day, and so I've tried to live my life from that point on in a way such that I don't regret things. Like, so whenever I talk to my family members, I try to remember this may be the last time that I get to talk to them. This may be the last visit we have, because we don't know. We're not promised tomorrow. I could die. They could die. So now I have to get through the next few months, which are going to be rough. So I just need to keep reading. And I feel like I've been at this for several hours now. I don't know how long it's been, but it has been a while. It's just taken me time to get through these things. Another entry that I just read reminded me that during this time, I did get a lot of perspective. And this is kind of a tricky part of the weight loss journey because, you know, when you're faced with something like this, the death of a very close loved one, it's kind of like, what difference does it make? Right? Like if I gain 5 pounds, is that a huge deal? No, it's not. Right. But at the same time, it's important to keep your weight in check. And I knew that. But it was a thing going back and forth in my mind, you know, because things were so stressful and I was, you know, just upset about all this stuff. I had these thoughts of what difference does it make if I, you know, gain, like, what if I gained to 158? Would that make a difference? What if I gain more? What if I, you know, or does it even matter if I stay in the 140s? In these entries, I'm seeing that, you know, there were a couple of main ways that I tried to deal with my stress, aside from prayer and that kind of a thing. I tried to stay really busy and I tried to live in day-tight compartments. Those were two of the main strategies I took away from How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. And I do try to practice what I preach on this channel. Like I do those things in the hopes that my life will be better, that I won't have quite as much stress. Another challenge I was dealing with during this time was I had access to my dad's chart. And so I had the ability to check his numbers, his blood gases, which they would just do like every, you know, couple of hours or whatever. And I was just spending a lot of my time looking at his chart and thinking about these things and then trying not to do those things and then kind of like battling my head, like, what should I be doing? How should I be using my time? And during this time, it was very difficult because I needed to be creating things for this channel. And at the same time, I was very sad. And it's very hard to be on camera when you're sad. Like, I didn't want to be insincere or inauthentic. Like that's a part of what I try to do for this channel, is I just try to show you like an unvarnished look at weight loss and all of that. But at the same time, you know, people don't want to just, you know, see a crying person on the videos. At least I don't think so. And the thing is, though, my life wasn't 100% sad. Even during this very difficult time, you know, there were times where I laughed. Even when I went up to see my dad when he was in the ICU and he was in a coma, basically, I had times with, you know, my mom and my cousin and my sister where we laughed. I mean, we had some sweet times, even in the midst of this really terrible time, which reminds me, you know, nothing is ever, you know, just all terrible. Try your best to focus on the positive. It's better than just letting yourself be swallowed up by the negativity. So I just read this sentence and I think it kind of sums up how I was feeling during this time. I said, I feel sad, anxious, and panicky in one way, but in another, I'm at peace with it all. I suppose the flesh is just weak. So my plan, as always, will be to stay busy. So that was kind of just the way I felt that entire time. There was part of me, the spiritual side of me, was at peace, just knowing, even if he dies, he's going on to a better place. That was one side of me. But the other side was, this side that was really sad and anxious about the whole thing. We were going to maybe have to make some decisions because of the state he was in that were going to be difficult and heartbreaking. And that's life. That's part of the weight loss journey, is there's just these things that are there. There's not sometimes a clear right or wrong, or, you just kind of have to go through the best you can. So then in the midst of all this, I found out another immediate family member has cancer. And so it was just another thing that just happened. And it was just like, I kind of felt like, can things get any worse? So then my dad passed away a few days later. And then after that, I just had days where I was on the verge of tears all day long. I canceled a YouTube live because I couldn't get on camera. And I started having nightmares and trouble sleeping. It was a rough time. And so adding to all this, on May 5th, that was our Orthodox Easter. And so that was about 9 days before my dad passed away. But the tradition in our church for the 40 days after Easter is to not fast. And I wanted to take part in that tradition, but it seemed like a terrible time to do that because, again, I know I have this tendency to overeat or to emotionally eat. But I decided, maybe it's going to be good for me. And so I decided, I'm not going to fast. And what that meant for me was I didn't want to go, long periods of time without food. So I would, have a little something in the mornings, even though, that's not my preferred way to eat. I wanted to try this. And so during that time, I actually ended up losing a little bit of weight, not very much, but it was a difficult thing to try during this time where I was, going through all this stuff. I wrote a whole blog post about this, and I'll link to that in the description. But, it was an interesting time. Also, during this month of May, there were a few other people that were having some serious health issues that were people in my life, and it was just difficult. It was a really tough month. I cried a lot. On June 18th, I wrote, "I can't imagine how bad I'd be if I weren't exercising and praying and going to church. Thank God I lost weight when I did and got into good habits when I did. I needed that time, God's timing." When I think back on this year, despite how hard it was, I know that the good habits I was in really helped me. The walking, even though, for a time there, I wasn't walking, I was swimming instead. I was being active. I was not just sitting and wallowing. And that was important. It was really important. So I know that that's not how it works for everybody, though. Some people go through a year like this when they're trying to lose weight. And that's really difficult. And if it had been me, I think that I probably wouldn't have done as well on the weight loss journey that particular kind of year. Like if I had been trying to lose weight this year, I think I would have failed miserably. But that doesn't mean I would have failed overall. But my point is, it is important to have self-compassion and to look at things honestly. When things aren't going well on the weight loss journey, look around your life and see. And then, move forward as best you can. So for the month of June and well into July, I was struggling a lot with this channel. Am I doing the right things? I'm always I'm not always doubting myself on this channel, but certainly in my journal, I'm talking about, I don't know if I should just keep making videos. It was difficult to do so, but also because I wasn't creating content consistently, my ad revenue was down and my book sales were down. And it was just and summer's not a great time usually anyway, for weight loss stuff. The best book sales months and best watch time and everything I get is in the earlier part of the year, generally speaking. But just because the year had been so rough, everything was just kind of going down and down and down. So my mood's still not getting better. So in July and August, there was more bad things. There was one particular situation that I'm not going to go into on this channel. But basically it was just 2 weeks of just a lot of stress. And just a time I really didn't want to think about. And that whole thing cost $1,000. And so it was adding just more stress. And then in August, my husband's hours got cut. So the rest of August was just pretty rough emotionally. I had like a migraine at one point. I also had sleep paralysis at one point, neither of which is very fun, but it just kind of points back to, things were not going well. So it's like unsurprising, but it is nice to review it. On September 4th, I started another YouTube channel called Kayla Cox Writer. And my idea was it would maybe help me because there are things I want to do on this channel that YouTube penalizes me for. So if I do things that are unrelated to specifically to weight loss, then basically it not only do I not get very many views for that type of video, but also subsequent videos that I make don't get watched. And it's something to do with the algorithm. I've looked it up, and the thing is, it's like I could just say to myself, well, it doesn't really matter, but it does matter. Like I can't afford to just not pay attention to what the algorithm is doing. So my idea was that I would start this other channel so that I could make videos about whatever I wanted, without really having to narrow it down so much. And so far it's been going well, but I haven't been consistently adding to that channel. In the new year, I probably will, but it's just been like when I look back, I think, really, was that the best time to start a new YouTube channel? So towards the end of September, things actually started looking up. My husband decided to go back to a job where the income potential is much better, to leave that job where it was just a really tough schedule. We were waking up at 2:30 in the morning. It was hard on everybody. It was hard on him, but also hard on the whole family. It was actually kind of funny because he left that job with the hopes that he could just start this other job immediately. But because some paperwork issues just took longer than expected, there was like a whole month there where he wasn't earning income, and we didn't know that was going to happen. So that was a bit more stress, but overall things were starting to look up. And overall, I can tell from the entries where I just started to do more projects to finish things. I was kind of just coming out of that, I think, period of grieving. Not to say that it was over, but it was just getting better. Things were getting better. In mid-October, I started cold plunging because I decided that, this coming season, I knew that there's going to be less sunlight during the winter months. That can take a toll on my mood. And I knew all this stuff that had happened in 2024 was probably going to be, just difficult for the holiday season. So I'm glad that I did that. And I'm glad that I stuck with it. I still do that to this day. During this time, I also finished the print version of the Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting workbook, which I put on Amazon. So things were finally starting to just get finished, which was nice. My journal entries started to get really sporadic, like going like a week without journaling, which is rare for me, but it does sometimes happen. And at the same time, there were some good things happening. Yeah, I started being more consistent with my content on this channel. And because I was doing that, my book sales were rising. So I had an entry on November 7th where I said that I had noticed that I had had several days where I had been eating too fast or just feeling overly full after the meal. So in hindsight, I was looking at that and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting because things were really starting to seem to get better. I think there were probably a couple of things. One, it might be that, when things are better, it can be easier to overeat sometimes because there's like that feeling of a bit of stress relief. And so you kind of just can kind of let your foot off the gas a little bit, which is not good when it comes to weight loss. But also there was ongoing stress because of money. So there was that aspect too, because even though things were looking up, things were still, in those beginning phases. Also, it was possible that during this time, it was just harder because it was my birthday. And then also Thanksgiving was coming up and I was probably just kind of anticipating that we're going into the holiday season. And I mean, we kind of already were. I kind of think of the holiday season as after Halloween, that kind of begins it. And I was, missing my dad, missing my papa. In mid-November, I started having these weird auditory dreams. It's called exploding head syndrome. But basically, I would wake up to a really loud noise that didn't exist. And it's just a thing that's kind of related to sleep paralysis. And sleep paralysis is usually something I only experience when I'm really stressed out, and I know that about myself. And so the auditory dreams were just this other weird thing that happened just for a little while, and it hasn't happened since then. Which, by the way, when sleep is not going well, and I would say that this year has just been a really tough year on my sleep, because of how early in the morning I was waking up until, basically October, but then also just the stress of the year, all the different things that have been happening, dealing with nightmares, dealing with sleep paralysis, dealing with exploding head syndrome. I mean, there was just a lot. And that can also affect the weight, because when you're feeling tired, it's harder to pay attention to those cues that say, okay, you're full, stop eating. It's harder to have the willpower to actually stop eating when you know that you're full. You kind of move through your day kind of slower. You're not as active, or I'm not as active. Even though I have those goals, and I do. I mean, I go out and walk my 6 miles, but your body has this funny way of, like, when you're feeling lethargic, to just kind of, it can even blink slower, but you're just not going to fidget as much. And you're not going to get up and do as much as you normally would. So all those are factors that play into my weight. Another thing that I was kind of dreading was my first Thanksgiving without my dad. And so I knew I was going to be traveling. So traveling also is a time where that can be a time of some weight gain. Ideally, I would be entering into the holiday season, 146, 147. That way, if, I gain 3 pounds, like, no big deal. It's like right around 150. But I was entering into this season like around 151. So I knew that it was going to be a time where not only was I missing my dad and everything, and my papa, but also just trying to navigate the holiday season. Probably I kind of assumed I was going to be sad a lot of times, but I didn't want to stress eat. But I also wanted to, enjoy and partake of those, Christmas cookies and all the different things. So on December 11th, I wrote that I felt like everything was taking so much effort lately. It felt like I was just syrupy. And I think that's a pretty accurate description of my holiday time. It has just been like, things take more effort. It doesn't mean that I don't do them, because I have, made videos, and I have been more consistent, but it hasn't come easy. On December 16th, I had this entry. My weight was 154.8 that morning, which was, I think that's the highest my weight has been in maintenance. And so my notes say, yes, weight is higher. Yesterday we had our Chinese food and Christmas story tree decorating day. I feel pretty chill about the weight, because really, I think I'm doing really well considering the circumstances. And I still agree with that. When I look back, I'm like, yeah, I mean, a part of it is, are you giving yourself too much of a pass? And you can do that. Like, you can make excuses for yourself, and you can maybe be a bit too lax. If anything, I tend to be the other way. I tend to be the type of person who's going to be a bit too hard on myself. So I do try to give myself compassion, and during this time, that's what I've been doing. So I finally finished all the entries. I did notice that I had gone like 10 days without journaling, and that was from like December 20th to the 30th. And I think that was, again, because we were just so busy. We had a lot of Christmas type things going on. We had lots of church services. And so journaling just kind of fell by the wayside. Plus, I'm sure during that time, and I know during that time, there were days where I was not in a good mood, where my days just kind of got away from me. And so, yeah, after looking at that, now I'm just going to write like a brief paragraph that sums up 2024 for me, which I think is just going to be basically this. 2024 was a rough year. So step 3 is to review your calendar, which I did do just now. And it didn't take me very long, because first of all, I'm really bad about putting stuff on my calendar. And I used to have like a system. I only did it for like a year, and I long to get back to that. But basically, I used to do time blocking. This year has just felt so crazy. And I know this is an excuse, but I didn't use my calendar very much at all. But what I did see on our calendar was we did not do much. Like it was like whenever we were traveling, it was for a funeral, which costs money. You know, it takes money out of the budget to go to do these things. I went to visit my dad. I rented a car. Like those things cost money. And so we had less money to do fun things with. And besides, I don't really know that I felt like going and doing fun things. So it was, you know, like looking at my calendar, I can see this coming year, I need to do a better job of getting out there and being more social and having people over and that kind of a thing. Step number 4 is to review your tracking for the year, so specifically weight tracking. And I did do a good job on that, despite all the terrible things that happened this year and all the different times where I was feeling just down. I kept weighing every day, and I did not take a break from weighing. I knew that that would be a temptation, that I would think, oh, as an act of self-compassion, I just don't have to weigh right now. But I was like, nope, that is truly self-sabotage. So I kept weighing, and I'm really glad that I did, because despite the fact that my weight is a little bit higher right now, I'm well aware of it. I know how to get it off. You know, the thing about weight loss is at this weight, it is a long process. Like it'll probably take me to get, you know, well down into the 140s. I would estimate this probably going to take me into the middle of this year, or maybe even longer than that, because that's just how slowly I lose weight at this current point. You know, when I lost from like 158 down to 142, it was 1/3 of a pound a week. So, you know, if I want to lose, you know, 6 pounds, let's say, then that's going to be, carry the 2. What is it? It'll take a while. It's really not something I'm worried about. One thing that I used to do a long time ago when I would struggle with my weight is whenever I would gain weight, I always thought it was like this big mystery, like, oh, I don't understand why I'm gaining weight. But in 2016, I realized like, no, every time I gain weight, it's just because I'm eating too much. And I just got that firmly in my mind. And, you know, the good news is the holiday season is quickly coming to a close. In a few days, like everything's going to basically go back to normal, God willing. And so I think that I'll be back in the 140s probably by April or so. But that's, you know, that's a loose kind of a plan. It may happen later than that, may happen sooner than that. It's not something that I feel a big rush to, you know, get back into the 140s really fast. Step number 5 is to review your spending and income. And so I did that, looked back at what our spending was, what our income was. And there were things that, you know, one of the questions I ask on here, are there things that you spent on that you regret? And there was really nothing that we spent on that I regret. It was like all the things that we spent money on feel like necessary things. There were repairs, unforeseen expenses. Also, our income on the other side of the equation was, you know, lower than we really wanted it to be, needed it to be. And there are parts of me that think, well, I should have done better. But at the same time, I feel like I was doing the best I could do. And so was my husband. Like we were both doing our best. And it just like, there are times like that where it just kind of happens, where it's like, okay, well, things didn't work out the way that we hoped that they would. But things are hopefully going to be better moving forward. The good news is we didn't go into debt for all that. We had some savings, and that helped us get through the time. We're very frugal, so that helped also. I kept our spending in check, even during a time where there was this kind of temptation I felt from time to time, like I'm going through a rough time. And I had times where I didn't want to pay attention to the budget, but I did anyway. You know, it's like kind of like the steps. Like there were plenty of days where I didn't want to go out there and get my 6 miles in, but I did it anyway. And I'm glad that I did. It was good for me to do those things. I did track our spending. I kept, you know, our checkbook reconciled the whole year. That's been a habit I've had since I was a teenager of doing those things. So on that end, it was good. It was just, you know, the income maybe could have been a little bit better. And step 6 is to write a small paragraph summing up the year. And I really think I can sum up my year in one sentence. And it was just 2024 was a rough year. Step 7 is to set your goals for the coming year. So I'm going to take the next day or so, since we're still coming up on the end of the year, to really think things through about what do I want my goals to be. I do like to use Zig Ziglar's Wheel of Life, where he talks about the different areas to set goals in. They are physical, spiritual, intellectual, marriage, social, career, and family. And I do try to have at least one goal in each of those areas, so that, you know, when things aren't going great on the weight loss journey, there are other things that I can point to and be like, yeah, but I did read 52 books this year. So at this point, my year-end review is done. All I need to do is set those goals, and I will do that. But I hope that this little peek into my world is helpful. It's always a little bit intimidating talking about these things. I kind of feel like, well, I know that I can never please everybody. I'm sure there are some people out there who are disappointed that I don't always have my weight at 142, you know, just always. And I also have these hesitations about sharing these things because, you know, the weight gain was pretty small, and it's not that much. And I know sometimes people gain larger amounts, and that's okay. Like I'm sharing it in the hopes that it kind of shows you the realities of, you know, weight loss and maintenance. So I hope that by sharing this, it encourages you that, you know, sometimes you're going to have rough years, and I'm hoping 2025 will be a better year. So far, it's looking promising. And so I'm just trying to be really optimistic. I do try to be optimistic throughout it all. And it does help on the weight loss journey, especially in maintenance, especially if you've had a time where your weights are a little bit higher. Just knowing you know how to lose weight, you know how to get back down to where you were. It just takes the discipline of doing those things, of stopping when full, of, you know, when you do find, and like you've seen, like there were times where I realized like, oh, I've been feeling overly full and I've been eating fast, and hello, it's showing up on the scale like it should. So I hope that this video was helpful for you. I hope that your 2024 was better than mine, and I hope that 2025 is a great one for all of us. Thanks for watching.